Hello to the cult of illiteracy, and welcome to the Culturally Illiterate podcast. We're doing another one-shot this week. This is the podcast where four friends sit around and we chat about movies that had an impact on us, left a mark, if you will. Who's Mark? I don't know. Who's to say? I am Jason, and I quite love Werther's Originals.
Are you old?
No. Well,
shut the fuck up, Sean.
Are we comparing myself to a newborn or to a 100-year-old man?
Are you a 100-year-old man?
No.
I feel like that's a lie.
I'm 22.
Like, I'm Jake, and I'm really bad at filling out March Madness brackets. Like, it's to the point of like superhumanly bad at it. I don't understand how I keep doing this poorly.
I'm doing pretty well on mine.
My name is Matt, and I randomly filled out my March Madness bracket. I paid $5 to fill one out, and I literally played Eeny, Miny, Mo with every single matchup.
Well, I bet Matt picked all 16 seeds advancing.
Hi, my name's Sean, and I don't like balls.
And Sean's the gay one.
I've gotten all but one pick correctly so far at the time. And now, to be fair, we are still in the very first round of 64, so I am still very
69?
early on. We're not even like halfway through that round at the time of recording this.
Sean,
but I've gotten all but one.
Do you feel like tease that 68 teams make the tournament, Sean? Do you feel like that's just like a bit of a tease?
Why? It should be 69. Just round it out. And there is no 70. 69 is your rounding out point.
Well, I once told Jason that if I made the rules for basketball, the game would be decided by who hit 69 first. But also, like, if you get to 68, but you can't go over. So if you get to 68, you need to hit one free throw to hit. Like, if you hit just like a layup and go to 70, you're done. You automatically lose. So that's my pitch for improving basketball.
I want to add that ironically, the only game that I've picked incorrectly so far in March Madness was my favorite team, Oregon, upsetting South Carolina. Yes.
Oh, you didn't pick the Ducks?
No, I didn't. I picked the
I
Gamecock.
did.
I thought that the South Carolina Gamecocks were gonna win, and the Ducks won by 6.
I picked the Ducks.
Go Ducks, but that busted my bracket. But that's okay. I'd rather the Ducks win.
Does busting make you feel good?
Busting makes everyone feel good. Now, does anyone have any recs other than busting?
Yeah. Love Lies Bleeding. If you're Love Lies Bleeding, that's all. It's like a lesbian love story about bodybuilding and crime.
All right.
My two favorite things: crime
It's
and
Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien, and actually Ed Harris, who's in the movie we're talking about today. Ed Harris is in it.
You texted me that you were about to see that because you texted me that you were about to see Kristen Stewart's new movie.
There's some stuff at the end that, like, if you're listening to this and you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. That I respect the choice. It didn't necessarily click for me, but it got a reaction.
Well, I like Kristen Stewart.
She's fantastic, as is everyone in the movie. Katie O'Brien's also fantastic in it.
Well, good. Shout out to them. Anyone else? Any recs? Any stories? Any jokes? I don't know. I have some recs if no one else does.
I want Matt to say something because he looks like he's just hiding.
Matt's always hiding.
He looks like
that's not new.
I don't see any color to him at all, and it just looks like he's this little block in the
That's
corner.
because the light's behind me, and so it looks like I'm just pitch black right now. I mean,
so I'm backlit too.
I don't really have any recs. I don't really have any
that's
recs.
fine.
So
you don't have to.
You don't have to. You absolutely.
I'm trying to. Oh, here's a story from me and Jason, and also like our sister Haley and Priya, my fiance, and her dad went out to Vegas. We got an uncle who lives out there, and I was trying to think of like a good story from Vegas, and here's one that I think you guys will appreciate. So the Taco Bell flagship store is out there. Me and my siblings, we all love Taco Bell. So of course we go there one night for dinner. Recommend going to if you're in Vegas. It's a good Taco Bell. They got alcoholic like slushies and shit.
Blast freezes.
But this woman walked. I was not there for this. I don't think anybody other than my dad was. This woman walked up to my father and how did it start? But she ends up
He
saying,
was just standing
"You're
out there,
ashamed."
and
She at some
said,
point she says,
she
"You're
said,
ashamed."
"Sir, I lost my credit card," and he said, "That's a shame."
Ashamed,
she said,
yes. And she
"You're
said,
ashamed."
"You're ashamed." To which he said, "Why? Why is that?" And she said, "'Cause you're a gay pedophile." And he
Yes.
said, How do you figure?" And he goes, "How do you figure that?" And she goes, "'Cause you're here in this time and place and juncture." And that was it. And I just thought that was where the first thing that
Yeah.
came to my mind from the trip was that.
She said, "Oh, you're not
don't know.
gonna
I
give
find
me your
that to
credit
be-
card?
I
Fuck
still think
you,
the funny thing
gay
from that was
pedophile."
Priya texting us out of the blue in the random group chat and being like, "Do you guys have any money? I'll pay you for it. I swear."
Oh yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
guys were-
If
she-
anyone
What
had
was that
cash-
Why
for?
you guys were presumably
She was
gambling
trying
it away.
to. She was trying to. No, she needed to leave a tip for something.
Yeah, she was actually just
And
leaving a tip, but accidentally sent asking for. So she was just seeing if anyone had cash.
It
But
was
she
so
sent
And
it to the
she
wrong
sent
group
it to
chat.
the wrong group chat, so she sent
was
it
just so funny 'cause
to
you're
a
in
bunch of
Vegas.
people who were in different
Yeah.
states and could not give her any cash at that time. So
And also, comes off as oh, Perry goes to Vegas for a couple days and has a gambling problem, and
Yeah,
is
that's
begging
also true.
begging for us to send her money.
and is so blitzed that she's texting the wrong people.
I was blitzed a lot.
You
Or
were.
as I referred to, I tweeted out that I was blasted, except I forgot to say id and just said I am so blast right now. So then that became a bit of a
Brain blast.
calling car the whole week. Oh, I'm so blast right now. And I
You got
also said that
blast.
the Russians got to me. I don't know really know where I pulled that from.
Well, I have some Rex.
No.
Is it getting blast?
And they're not Russians. Well, some of them are from around there, but not Russian, actually. So, for one, the album Psychos by Young Lean and Blade, Bladee, and Young Lean spelled like Young Lean but without an O in Young. Psychos spelled with a K instead of a CH, Psykos. Their new album together. It's very good. It came out while we were in Vegas. I listened to it for the first time on the plane back, and I think something about being in the air while I listened to it just really made it resonate with me. I was just kind of vibes and listening to it. It's just a very vibey record. There's a lot of acoustic guitar, great production, as those artists both always have. And it's another great record from the two of them. Also, I'm gonna plug some small bands that have less than 2,000 streamers or monthly listeners on Spotify at the time of recording this. Because I think it's important to support small music and small music scenes, and I think everyone should do it more often. So, Homeview and Junkstar. Junkstar is one word with two R's. Both great emo bands, little shoegaze action, which is I'm a big fan of, and I think some you guys on this podcast would be into them. They got some good tunes out there, so that's what I gotta say. That's all I got.
I wear shoes.
Wear shoes? Was
I
that
wear
your thing?
shoes. No, I wear shoes.
You wear shoes?
I wear shoes.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, I mean, I guess kind of by default, if I look down,
Oh, shoegaze. I
I
hate you.
crack myself up.
Shoegaze is one of the best subgenres. So today it was my pick for our one shots. I was picking the film
nose.
that we were going to talk about that impacted me and left a mark on me, and we're talking about a movie I've seen many times, upwards of 15 times probably, through over many years. We are talking about, and from the title, I Am Legend, starring Will Smith and his dog. No, we're talking about The Truman Show, one of my favorite movies ever, top 3 for sure. I watched it for the first time in 7th grade when my English teacher showed us a trailer for it when we were reading The Giver, just for a reference of different times in popular culture that the idea of utopia or unreal life was used. And I thought it looked cool. Also, that teacher was fantastic. Shout out to great teachers in general, but because they can have a really big impact on you outside of classrooms. So shout out to that. But I thought the movie looked great. I went home and watched it, and it was fantastic. And I've watched it so many times since then, and I still love it just as much as I did the day I watched it. So to start this thing off, this movie was written by Andrew Nicole, directed by Peter Weir, and shot by Peter Bizou. It stars the legendary, one of my favorite actors of all time, Jim Carrey, as the titular Truman Burbank, his best role in my opinion. Laura Linney as Merle Burbank / Hannah Gill, Noah Emmerich as Marlon, Natasha McElhenney as Lauren / Sylvia, Tom Holland, Holland Taylor, and Brian Dele as Truman's mother.
Brian.
Sorry, Holland Taylor and Brian Delate, I don't know, as Truman's mother and father, and Ed Harris as Christoph. So how did any of you first hear this film, first see it? Have you guys seen it before I forced you all with a knife to your throats for this podcast to watch it?
Well, how I first heard of it was just browsing online and people talking great things about this movie. And like most movies I hear great things about, I ignored it for a number of years until actually somewhat recently. It was, I think it was during the pandemic when I finally gave Truman Show a look. And it was an interesting experience because I already watched like several in-depth videos about it without actually watching the movie. But then I finally watched it. And yeah, no matter how many in-depth videos you see, watching like the real thing is second to none. Although it's an interesting experience though, because you kind of like, you kind of get like the blinders off when you watch a movie after like watching an in-depth review of it. And so you're able to notice like the tiny details. And so my first time watching it, I gained a great appreciation for the movie because it also helps that I already knew what the movie was about and what it meant. And also Jim Carrey's incredible. Like, honestly,
Yes.
yeah, it is one of his best performances. Although I would say it's not the best because that obviously goes to the Grinch. Like that's like peak Jim Carrey.
That's fair.
I won't stand for this Dr. Robotnik slander.
Robotnik is a close second.
This is erasure.
That's a fair.
Robotnik is a close second. It's a close second, but the first will always hold a special place in my heart. And then third is what was that movie called? I forgot what the whole title was called, but it was like something Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
But I'm gonna watch it soon.
It's so good.
I might watch it tomorrow.
So
I'm off work tomorrow. Maybe I'll watch that tomorrow.
Honestly, I would say personally, it's a much better Jim Carrey performance. I love that.
I should watch it. I don't know what the fuck I'm waiting for because I love Jim Carrey and I love movies, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm also like a dumbass and lazy.
Honestly, both of these movies, both Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Truman Show, both are fantastic movies. Both have multiple layers, like Shrek. And
I appreciate you putting that in there.
And because I knew you were going to say it.
2 podcasts in a row with the Shrek reference.
And honestly, both of them are deep, and both are left up to your interpretation. But I'm not going to get into that right now because obviously we're not going to get to the ending yet. But yeah, that's my experience with the Truman Show.
How about the rest of you?
Mine is similar to Matt's, except for the fact that I didn't watch this movie, and this is the first time watching it.
Oh, tight.
Because this is one of those things where like I always saw stuff about it online. I remember originally when I knew nothing about the movie other than Jim Carrey was in it, and it was called The Truman Show, that I just assumed that it was a TV show about, like, it was actually a TV show, not that it was like a movie. And I always got confused because eventually I learned that it was a movie, but I didn't know what it was about. And I always heard, why would you call a movie a show? And, and then eventually I obviously learned what it was about. So like the plot of it itself, I wasn't like I expected that, but like it I love Jim Carrey. It's just something I never got around to because it's one of those movies that I heard so many great things, and then it goes on a list, and then it's never touched ever again.
Yeah, it's like I kind of am glad that I watched it so young because I literally knew nothing about it other than like I thought it looked cool in English class when we watched the trailer, and I loved Jim Carrey already, so I was like, oh, I'll watch it. And so I like it was completely just, obviously I knew the plot from the trailer generally, but I hadn't seen like breakdowns or heard great things about it. I just watched it on a whim.
Yeah, like I couldn't tell you when I first heard about it. It came out in like June of '98, so like only a couple months after I did birth. So, you know what I mean? Like by the time I was like conscious enough to know what movies are, is well within the public consciousness. And I think it's just one of those things that like at least within like American pop culture, let's say, like I'm gonna compare it to some like drastically different movies, but it's like you don't really know when you first heard about The Godfather or Back to the Future. It's just like one of those things exists and people really like, and it has this great rep. But similar to Sean, I think like there's so many movies like that, and this was just one I hadn't gotten around to until now. So the viewing for this that I had the other day was my first time actually watching it, though I did know the premise of he lives in a TV show.
Oh boy, there's just more than just me. I thought I was gonna be alone for this being a first viewing.
Yeah,
No,
well, I picked it because
my Truman Burbank virginity.
Yeah, no, I knew Jake either like hadn't seen it, or I was pretty sure Jake hadn't seen it, and that's one of the factors in why I picked it. 'Cause
I didn't care at all. I picked the movie I saw with you guys.
Well, no, I know. I just thought it would be fun to pick something that you guys haven't, or at least one.
I mean, I appreciated it because it's one of those things that's like sometimes when you have those movies, it's hard. Like it's one of those things like they feel so. When a movie's coming out in theaters, you're like, oh, I have to make time to go see this. But when you have classics like this that like have existed your entire life, it's easy to be like, oh, it's always there. I'll get to it. So when like a good excuse comes along to be like, I'm gonna carve out 2 hours and watch the Truman Show. So yeah, I like that it was something I hadn't seen.
Yeah, and we've already talked a bit about Jim Carrey, but before we get too deep into the plot or into the plot at all, I want to bring up a couple things. One of the things that I love so much about this movie and why it stuck with me so much is Jim Carrey, and that I think that he is the perfect person for this role. I think in every way this role in this movie embodies what Jim Carrey does. It's spontaneous, it's wacky, it's whimsical, but it's also serious and heartful and emotional and suspenseful. And that's, I think, everything that he does great. He's one of the funniest actors you'll ever watch, but also one of the most heartwarming and emotional, in my opinion, at least. That said, a couple little fun facts. Robin Williams was actually considered for the role until I believe Peter Weir saw Ace Ventura, and after seeing Ace Ventura, which is a very different movie, he was very impressed by Jim Carrey and wanted to cast him. Now, also,
I was just gonna say, maybe it's the part when Jim Carrey talks through his ass is when he was like,
I bet that's what it was. He's sitting there skimming through the Truman Show script, watching Ace Ventura, seeing Jim Carrey talk through his ass, and he's like, God damn it, I know what I'm doing.
He's the one.
Gary Oldman also did screen testing for this, and I think that would have been bad.
Oh God,
yeah, that seems like a mismatch.
I think that would have been so bad.
What?
Yeah.
Very
So-
talented
He's a
man, but that just
fantastic
does not
actor.
seem
Great
like a
actor.
fit.
Great actor, not this role though. Without any further ado. So, selected from birth and officially adopted by a television studio following an unwanted pregnancy, Truman Burbank is the unsuspecting star of The Truman Show, a reality television program filmed 24/7 through approximately 5,000 hidden cameras and broadcast worldwide. Christof, the show's creator and executive producer, seeks to capture Truman's authentic emotions and give audiences a relatable everyman. Truman's hometown, Sea Haven Island, is set inside an enormous dome populated by crew members and actors who advertise products to both Truman and the audience to generate revenue for the show. The elaborate set allows Christof to control every aspect of Truman's life, including the weather. To prevent Truman from discovering the truth, Christof orchestrates scenarios that curtail his desire for exploration, such as the quote-unquote death of his father in a sea storm, to install thalassophobia, and constantly broadcasts messages about the dangers of traveling and the virtues of staying home. So, right off the bat, just in that first little blurb, we get into one of my favorite things about this movie, as well, is how clever and how well written it is, in that they really thought of just about everything. Because, like I mentioned in that blurb, they instill in him, he lives on an island, and they instill in him to be fearful of traveling over water so that he won't want to leave that island, so that they don't have to worry about the logistics of making him travel and continuing the show. They all of the issues that you would think that they would run into, they have something to fall back on, which I think is very a credit to the writers to actually go through and think of all of that.
I find it terrifying, the idea of a corporation adopting somebody. That
That
makes
is
me so goddamn uncomfortable.
one of those things that it's like each day it feels more and more like possible.
Yeah, it does
Like,
feel more
the Zuck might
real
just
now.
make a meta baby. I wouldn't be that shocked.
It is upsetting because I think this is a movie that like has aged super well in an unfortunate way, because everything in it just feels more and more like something like especially as like reality
Like the
TV has like
Matrix.
continued to like blow up in like the time between 1998 till now. And just it is really disturbing for a movie that is like generally pretty, like, it's a comedy, and I kind of assumed it was going to be a lot more like vulgar than it is, but it's like a PG movie, like it's wildly, but it is, which almost makes it more disturbing because it's so sanitized feeling, which I think fits, which is like a good decision. I think that like they keep like the language is pretty in check, and it's not like there's not like a ton of innuendo, because it's this like sanitized world that can apply to a lot of like the stuff you'd see in like 50 sitcoms. I think I know that's like reality TV versus like scripted television, but you think about the like world of like Happy Days and things like that, where it just feels very reminiscent of like, let's not acknowledge let's just like ignore the bad and put this shiny coat on. I know Norman Rockwell paintings were like one of the inspirations for the movie, apparently.
Yes. Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
Norman Rockwell, sitcom, reality TV. I don't know.
And also to your point, that it's aged well. Another thing that I think contributes to how well it's aged is that because it's such a like an isolated thing where he's he's unknowingly trapped inside this bubble and inside this TV show. It's like none of the technology or fashion or anything really feels outdated because it's not real anyway, you know what I mean? So it's like you can watch this in any generation and it won't feel out of place. Like you watch old movies now and like even as great as some of them might still be, there is some things that it's like, oh, that's not as it is today, you know, that's not how people act, that's not how people talk, that's not this or that. But because this is so like, okay, yeah, that's not how this is today, but it's also just a fake bubble of reality, you know?
I agree. I mean, even when you talk about it being brought to today, like I get that. So like this is jumping way ahead, but the movie kind of leaves you with like, you know, you're not sure exactly what Truman's life is going to be like after all that happens and whatnot. And you know that's very intentional. I think that was a good ending. But honestly, like, there's so many movies that get unnecessary sequels and like legacy sequels. If I found out they were going to make a Truman Show sequel, I'd be potentially into it, because I think if you told another story that was just like, hey, the Truman Show ended, but it was a 30-year run that made a shit ton of money. Let's run it back with a new baby. Like, there's gonna be more unwanted pregnancies now more than ever, you know. And that are like brought to term, and I wouldn't want to follow up, to be clear, on Truman at all, but I feel like this is like a story that like every 30 years, as like society shifts and technology shifts, you could like tell with fresh input for how the world has, in the ways that it stayed the same but also the ways it's progressed or regressed.
Yeah, well, the writer of the movie actually also was questioned that about a sequel, and he apparently pitched a sequel TV show, and it didn't get very far, but his concept was basically that after the 30-year success of the Truman Show, that there would be other networks trying to do something similar and having different people born in all different places of the world, and one in Harlem, one in here, one there, and then they'd interact and they wouldn't know that they were on TV, but they'd also be in the real world. I read about it one time, and that's what I recall about it. And Matt's masturbating.
Yeah, that's gonna get cut. That's gonna get cut out. But Matt's doing this thing right now where he's making a lot of sounds but not talking. So I'm gonna keep muting Matt. So you guys didn't hear that because I'm cutting it out. But that was ferocious.
Jason just finished.
I love that we have not given context to what Matt was doing, so all we heard was me say that he was masturbating, and now you said it's getting
we've made jokes about it before. And if anyone so this isn't in the episode because it's before we started recording, but if anyone who's listened to the episode with Dan Drambles, you should go listen to it if you haven't. The Dark Knight, the audio kind of got fucked up, but it's still a good listen. Matt introduced himself by clarifying that he was petting his cat, not masturbating, which is like, what a first impression. But usually it's like a gentle little tap in the background. This was like the ass slapper 3000. It was vicious.
That's how I normally pet her. It's just that this time, like, she was in the way. I got up to open the door to let her in, right? And then she immediately jumped to my spot. And there's no room on my bed to go. So I just started to pat her back. Hopefully she's, she received enough attention to move, but she didn't move. And so the ass slapping just continued until eventually she did move. But at that point, everyone heard it. So, yeah. Whatever.
This doesn't make any of it better to me because it's just Matt talking about slapping cat ass.
They like it. She likes it. Anyway, the Truman Show. Anyone else get I know it's usually about humans, but like an uncanny valley vibe? Like I think they kind of captured that energy of the uncanny valley with the town. Like it's really unnerving from the start.
Because
it literally feels like it's programmed.
It looks like every small suburban town you've seen, but also none of them at the same time. Like it looks specific, but unspecific.
They literally made like the most generic suburban neighborhood you can ever imagine, and it's so generic.
It's like
It's
More
kind of like
generic than Levittown somehow.
exactly. It's kind of like like Springfield for The Simpsons. It just represents like any suburban neighborhood in America.
Yeah, that's
And
a good comparison.
Anyone who's ever spent time in the suburbs is gonna get deja vu because it's like every single one somehow.
I know
yeah, because suburbans are boring.
the one thing that made me so uncomfortable throughout the whole movie was the product placements.
Yeah,
Because
Oh
they're
my
just
God.
That's
in the
the
beginning
thing,
they're
is
just
like,
so random it's kind of funny, but then it's like, oh, these are just so uncomfortable because it's so forced every single time it's
yeah,
done, of like pushing Truman up against the wall so that you can see
and
him
it's
next to the
yeah,
thing.
and it's so great because it's one of those things where, like, people act strange in commercials, but they're supposed to because it's a commercial and they're supposed to be acting to promote that product. But then you have these actors that are supposed to be acting like real life, but then suddenly they're like, "Do you want Mococo? It's the
Oh
best.
god,
I've tried all the other ones, and it's the best one."
that was so funny when it's like they're fighting over their whether they're gonna divorce
He's like
essentially or
having
not.
this,
It's just
like,
like, do you want hot
existential
chocolate?
crisis. He's questioning the relationship and everything, and she's like, "But we have Coco."
Well, 'cause everything's falling apart, but they're in her ear like they paid for the ad spot, so I don't care what's happening. You
Right.
show that fucking Coco,
Which,
and it's
again, like, it's absolutely real to life. Like, that's obviously what they would have to do in real life if they were shooting 24/7, because they would need to fund for that and they wouldn't have time for ads.
and they do shit like that in reality TV, and in general, like advertising is more like everywhere than ever, and to the point of like this is another element that's aged so well in the movie because like now you have influencers and you have social media and there's so many like things that are ads that don't even properly disclose their ads and are trying
Right.
so hard to just
You
be
have
like,
TikToks
oh
where
look,
there's
I'm
just
just
like
I'm just talking,
there's like
but
someone
like check out
just
this thing.
doing a dance on a TikTok while holding a bottle of Tide laundry detergent, and it just says like ad in the corner. And you have no idea that it's an ad. You're just like, why is she dancing with that Tide laundry detergent?
And there's some
By
like
the way,
rules
I
for
need
it, but a lot
laundry.
of people don't follow it and get away with not following disclosure. Like it's not you see that all
that's
the
also very
time.
true. That's also very true. But there's also, like, they do it very subtly in certain ways.
Like,
They're not
you know
subtle.
what?
They
Like,
try.
did you guys? I don't know if you guys aren't as chronically online as me. Good for you. But like, there was a thing going around this week of someone who was like, "Why don't they put ads on overhead bins and airplanes?" People were like, "Shut the fuck up." Why? Because
Stop
that,
giving
that's
them
what
ideas.
it is.
Don't
Is
give
it's
them
like
ideas.
you can't have an empty space without
NBA
the
jerseys
ad,
have
and
ads
this
on
is
them
that.
now.
Like we can't that in the Truman Show. It's like they can't have a lull because they have like these. And that's just talking about advertising, not even getting into the private. Like that is supposed to go into like the lack of privacy that creates, not even just for Truman, but for oh man, this movie show. The movie's so unnerving. It's one of the most like just unnerving things I've watched, and it's a
Well, yeah,
comedy.
it's
There is
Like
because what the movie
you get treated
represents
so
is
casually.
what the movie represents a very is a very negative but realistic future that we could live in. And it seems like with every passing year, it has aged better in the worst way possible. Because everything that the movie criticizes is slowly becoming our reality. And yeah, it's horrifying to be totally honest.
the one thing I did want to, and this kind of feeds into what Jake said and what Jason said in the beginning of this, is that the writers really did think of everything. There are some things I don't know if there's like some commentary stuff that they have on the DVD that I was reading about like before after having watched it, where like they even thought about the things of like, yes, Truman did have sex with his wife who is also an actor, and that like
I want to have an on-air conception.
and yeah, and so like the whole thing behind that and the way that it was written was that essentially she was a child star actor that had failed and was using the Truman Show as a way to keep up in the space. Um, and that every time in her contract for the show, every time she had sex, she was provided with a large sum of money every single time she had sex with Truman, which is just terrifying to think about how like uncomfortable like that scenario is. The idea of like, and then also like they apparently go over the whole thing of like they wouldn't actually film those sequences in the like universe of the show. Instead they'd like pan away like you would in like any other sitcom. Uh, but like the idea that like they have everything from like that stuff planned out to just those like super private moments also makes it really uncomfortable, and it's this weird commodification of like things that are so
Yeah,
intimate.
and that's the thing is like all the cast members are also in some way victim to the show as well, and they show that like in the interviews early on, like the actress, Laura Linney's character who the actress is being interviewed and she's like, there is no separation between my life and the show. My life is the show, and it's because they're so forced and conditioned to be 24/7 in character, especially someone like his wife who's with him, a lot of the time and is forced by that virtue to be in character most of her life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which like I can only the idea of that is like such a frustrating and like unimaginable thing to
Right.
me. Just like the idea of somebody like your
Like,
whole life is fake and you're accepting of it.
because like
So,
especially like imagine like as the actress as his wife, like you go to bed next to him every night in character. You wake up in character as Truman's wife.
and like I find it just a little bit different, the uncomfortability of like taking Truman, somebody who doesn't know that it's a show and is like acting genuine throughout the entire thing, versus somebody who knows that it's a show and is acting for the entirety of it
Yeah.
for a
He
majority of
is a
the show.
person.
Yeah, you're not like it's so
Yeah.
weird.
It's a weird comparison
You start to
between the
wonder
two.
too, like, because there's so many people in this town. You have like hundreds of extras or whatever, or if not thousands. And like again, like you said, like you're talking about like the quote unquote main supporting cast of the show, but there's people who are like extras, but that's their like they presumably sleep there, live there. Are there any people that form not like were there any babies conceived there not from like obviously they talk about like wanting to have Truman conceive a child on air, and that's like Christoph's big like vision for the show, but there's lots of people that are like not directly interacting with him daily, and like I can't even fathom what that life is like. And it makes me wonder, like, because you're talking about like commodifying what to Truman is a relationship, and all these parts of life that should just be just human interaction, but also like, is there crime there? Because there's people who are just that, you know what I mean? Like you put that many people
You would
together,
think
or is there
think
like
a town's worth of people that are in a building, someone might act out of line and
and they show like people breaking onto set, but like they
yeah.
also commodify like Truman's mental when he starts to realize something's up and have a mental breakdown. They still profit off of that, and it makes you like, what if he had killed himself, or what if in general, like what if one of the extras hangs themselves and like, or they're self-harm, like how do you? It makes me like that had to have happened in a 30-year span, and like it's just disgusting because there's no doubt in my mind that they would have been like, that's a plot line.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I find like the the background stuff is so interesting in this movie too. But like what is it? So like for certain things that they don't include, one example of it is that like this is another thing I read before, but like there are no cats. There are no cats that exist on the island, and it is never confirmed that cats exist. And I don't know if it's in the commentary or what. But one of the bigger things that is assumed is the reason why you never see cats, but you do see a lot of like dog information in the show, like just in like there's like a whole magazine for like dogs and stuff when Truman goes
Yeah,
by the
and they're
magazine
like
store.
dogs walking, I think.
And like the reason behind that is it's easier to train dogs than it is to train cats, so they can't have cats. So my question is crime a thing that's ever talked about? Does crime even exist there? Do they even
Right.
need police? We never
Would
see.
would they
do we-
state fake crimes just so that he's aware of crime?
Brain is this.
Who
Does
knows?
Truman know cats exist? Is he
Yeah,
gonna
that's
leave
what
the
I-
bubble at
like,
the end at 30 years old and discover cats?
Gonna
That's
see
one
a
of those
cat
things
and
where
be
it's
like,
like-
what the fuck is going on?
You have to think of how weird.
Bro, Andrew Lloyd Webber's gonna rock his fucking world. Like, I don't.
You rocked everyone's world, baby.
Magical
There's, like-
Mr. Stopperies.
Oh god. There's like so many tiny details that are just like that, where it's like, okay, that makes genuine sense. And like the only people that I think I don't know if we see cops, but I know we see firefighters when the like bridge is destroyed and he's trying to get across and he can't because they don't want him to escape. So like firefighters are real on the island, I guess, or are there as actors, and like some of the actors aren't even people who know what they're doing. So like obviously like you have the one guy who is driving a boat and he's like, I don't know how to drive a boat. I'm the bus
Like,
driver.
Do you think Truman knows about like world affairs and like history? Because like I wonder too if they ever considered being like, do we just convince him that this is the world, that there is no like that, just like Sea Haven is or whatever is it Sea Haven?
Yeah.
I doubt that because
See,
his
it
world
is-
No,
is
because
so
he knows
sanitized.
about Fiji.
But I mean, like, does he? Well, he does. I know that he
But-
does know about outside existing, but I wonder if they contemplated being like, is it going to be easier to maintain, to control him into not wanting to travel, or to convince him that there's nowhere to travel to? And then with that, it's like, does he know about the Holocaust? Like
That's
how
true.
much?
Did they make
what
up
is-
fake history to teach him in school?
What's religion there? I
Yeah,
don't
they
recall.
could've
Did they
taught-
show
they
like?
could've
Did they
taught
show
him-
churches or
They could have
mosques?
taught
Like
him
I don't
any
temple.
really.
I don't.
They
Yeah, well,
could've-
and that's
they
more
could've
disturbing.
made up
Is
an
that
entirely different culture and history to teach
There's-
him.
there's nothing you can think of that is not instilled in him. So as he enters the real world, who is he? And the movie forces you to say the same thing of like, what about myself has been like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think we live in a dome like Truman. But what about myself is by myself, and what about myself is like, I fucking love Taco Bell. But what if Taco Bell and me liking that is just because it got instilled really well with ads? Like how much of your person is your person, and how much of it is being manipulated?
Even then, to take that a step further, like even from just like the media we consume, the shows we watch. My mic fell during that. But like even the idea of like we gain a lot of who we are from like the things that we consume in general. So like any books we read, any shows we watch, any movies we watch, it kind of like shapes who we are to a degree for some people. And so to have this be the reverse of that almost, in like the idea of like these people are watching that show and then also either gleaning something from it or like taking something away from it. I mean, even in the end, we see like the show ends in the end of the Truman Show because Truman leaves, but like you see like people go, great, okay, what's on next? And there's no end to the consumption, so it just comes down to this creepy existential thought of like, my consumption of things never end, but how much of that consumption makes me me, and then how much of the things that I consume become me, and then like on top of that, who am I? And oh my god, it's just a weird like whole existential crisis that the show that the entirety of the movie kind of like brings into focus of like it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thought to be like, how much of me is really me and how much of it is the things I consume.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, where so many people stan corporations.
Yeah.
It's
Disgusting.
Today's an age soaked in consumerism.
I mean, it's a question. It's
For
a question
better or
of free
for
will.
worse.
Because Christoph, like, when Christoph tries to compel him to basically stay, he says, like, you're not getting any more truth out there than you are in here. And, like, listen, he's like obviously antagonistic, he's villainous, like I don't agree with him there, but I do think like I mean, but that doesn't make you, because it makes you question like how much, like take away the dome and what's the difference. And you rule with those actors. But my point is just like, yeah, how much is he's not gonna, it's not like he's walking out into some world where these things don't, like these forces don't exist. The product placement, the advertising, and the, even to an extent, like scripted behaviors, like behaviors that people kind of do inauthentically, are still going to be present. There's just, and there's also additional dangers, but he has to like make that decision to give up the safety. It fucks with you. Like it really does.
It's also like such an uncomfortable feeling that like throughout the movie, like all of this is that like Truman has a lot of hints that there's something outside of his borders, and that there's just something. He only has hints. He's going entirely off of faith. He has hints and ideas that like leads him to believe there's more outside of what he's in, until the end when he finally, like, his boat hits the wall and like breaks through the sky. And so he finally is like, he has genuine like 100% proof that everything is fake, that like his entire world and everything that he's seeing is just staged, which is like, that's just such a scary thought, to have like somebody go from like this is their whole world and entirely based on faith, to throw it all away for the idea that there's more, is kind of like I don't know, it's something that's like really thought-provoking in a way, and like obviously this whole movie is thought-provoking, so that really isn't that great of commentary, but like just the idea of like it's so crushing that this entire time he's going through it just based on faith, and the catharsis that he's like right, that he hits the wall and he's right, is like such a strong thing to me.
Let's read some more of this plot summary just to move this along. During his college years, Truman, though written to fall in love and marry fellow student Merrill, develops feelings for Sylvia, an extra. Although Sylvia is fired from the show before she can disclose the truth to Truman, not without trying, he secretly continues to dream of a life with her outside of his marriage to Merrill, and hopes to travel to Fiji, where he is led to believe Sylvia moved. In the real world, Sylvia joins Free Truman, an activist group that aims to cancel the show and have Truman released. As the show approaches its 30th anniversary, Truman begins to notice unusual occurrences around him, such as a broken spotlight labeled Sirius falling from the sky, and a column of rain following only him. A malfunctioning radio channel, precisely describing his movements, and the reappearance of his father, who is rushed away by crew members before Truman can confront him. Truman begins questioning his life and realizes that the city somehow revolves around him. So yeah, he sees the first little glimpse that he gets suspicious of is that the spotlight falls from the sky behind him, and that would make anyone confused and suspicious, I think.
I love how
so little slip up from the crew there.
And I think that's good because it's realistic. Like, no matter how good you are, you can't go 30 years without some kind of issue.
Well, and you know
but
what
at
I
the
was
same
thinking
time,
about
like
too?
What?
Like on one of my rewatches of this, it dawned on me. I was thinking about like, I wonder how many times that instances of that happened, but Truman just wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like it's a whole town with lights and cameras and whatever. So like I wonder how many, of course there were times where something like that happened, and it just so happened that he was there for that instance just at the right time.
It's also uncomfortable to imagine how much of it is you have so many things that they show when he was like a baby that they were just able to get away with because
because
he doesn't understand.
He was a child. He either doesn't remember or didn't understand it at the time.
What's the John that you hang over babies' heads in their cribs? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
and
like the little dangly thing.
The dangly ball. I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. I don't have babies.
But I'm sure anyone listening knows what I'm talking about. And they just have like a very obvious camera there because like a baby doesn't know what the hell that is.
No
But in
difference
general, like
between a camera and a
it's
fucking.
I think they do a good job of like that stuff happens and it's funny, but it still makes sense that he doesn't. The average person with no reason to think otherwise, with the very curated experience, even with something as strange as the rain or the speaker or whatever falling, is not going to go, "Oh, I live in a dome. Everyone's an
Right.
actor." Like it's just, especially when you get to the point of like the amount of faith he like Marlon is that's his name, right? The best friend.
Yes.
Marlon. Like you that has been your best friend since like elementary school. Like I've been best friends with Sean since we were 5. You're not gonna convince like weird things are not gonna wouldn't just convince me that Sean's an actor who's been an actor the entire time for decades.
Oh God, you found me
and
out.
like
I've been paying him this whole time,
a
actually.
typical person that is like decently mentally stable is not going to jump to that, even if it is the truth.
Right. Like, as crazy as it is that a lighting rig fell out of the sky, that could theoretically happen just from some kind of debris.
Well, that's it.
It's like, your brain wants to rationalize it in the most simple,
If I walked outside right now and a lighting rig fell, my brain is going to go, "That's crazy. Where did that come from?" And think it's more likely that it somehow got, knocked all the way over here. Yeah.
Blown out of something.
Then my entire life is a television show. There's a dome over me. Everybody's an actor except me. Like, there's like, which of those two things seems more likely?
Right, and especially because then he looks up to the sky and there's no evidence of anything fishy in the sky. The sky looks normal.
Well, yeah, there'd be nothing fishy in the sky because it's the sky. The fish live in the water, Jason.
Which he's afraid of.
Exactly. I kind of wonder if they stocked the sea with fish in there. I'm just curious because he went fishing.
They just had a full aquarium.
I mean, you have to create like a whole ecosystem, basically.
They just had like an aquarium level, like.
Or maybe
I know it's one of those things like on top of that, like when they show Truman in like the woods and stuff, the trees are all lined up. Like I don't know if you noticed, but in the scenes where they have him in the woods, the trees are all perfectly lined parallel to each other.
Which,
in, like,
on
rows.
one hand, you would think would tip someone off, but on the other hand, he doesn't know anything any different.
So, like,
yeah, that's it's like anything else. Though, when
trees grow, trees grow
randomly.
Well, it's like if you grow up without knowing poverty, it's gonna like blow your fucking mind when you find out about it. So like, yeah, I mean, if he the only thing he's experienced is those trees, why the hell would he think any different? Because they're not gonna give him information that says otherwise. And the simplicity, I think, is what works for it, because like the plot's pretty simple. Of like, baby adopted by corporation, they make a TV show, his life into a TV show. It's all fake, but the cracks start to show because he fell in love with an extra. Like it doesn't take a lot to like really explain it, right. But that makes it so much easier to buy into. Okay, like if they didn't overcomplicate it, so you're right in there. Like, okay, this guy's life's a TV show and he doesn't know it.
Yep.
Well, they how do you say it? Oh my gosh, they made up for the complexity for just in-depth characters and introspection. And yeah, like everything that Jake and Sean talked about is correct. The fact that his whole world's falling apart, you don't really, if you were in that situation, you would do the same thing. You would not want to admit that your whole world's a lie, because that's just admitting that your whole life, like your safe zone, everything is a lie.
You've lived
so all
30
of a sudden
years
your world's
for
not
nothing.
safe. Exactly. You lived 30 years for nothing. Your whole life is a lie. What you thought was safe, what you thought was secure is gone. And so like that overwhelming feeling would honestly break almost everybody. And which is what makes Truman such a great character, because he is just a very positive person. You can see why people gravitated toward him, why people love him on the show. It's because he's, he's extremely charismatic, and he's a nice guy. Like, you can't help but root for him.
Yeah, and Jim Carrey's just so charismatic too. There's no one like him.
I mean, like you said, it's really well cast. I mean, it's also well cast throughout. Like, I also think
Oh,
Ed Harris is
absolutely.
very good as Crystal, which I found out after watching and like reading a little bit that they never met. That Ed Harris was cast after Jim Carrey finished filming. And which I just think I don't know how intentional that was, but that adds to it. That like
that is cool. I like that.
That when Jim Carrey's filming the scenes at the end, when he's talking to him on the loudspeaker, that he doesn't actually like. He's just kind of like, it's just kind of conceptually the voice of God to him. Like,
yeah, that is cool.
That's it is. I mean, he's playing God to such a creepy. Yeah. When Christoph is like petting the screen on like footage of Truman sleeping, and he calls him like his child. It's so gross.
It is. It's so, Well, anywho, Truman's suspicions lead him to attempt to drive out of Sea Haven with Meryl, and a series of improbable disasters lead him to attempt to leave on foot, leading him to be subdued by people in protective gear because they're in hazmat because there's some kind of chemical spill, or so they say to him. Back at home, Truman openly questions Meryl's feelings for him, as well as her attempt to change the topic by advertising a product. In the ensuing confrontation, Meryl breaks character and is removed from the show shortly afterward. I love that scene where they have that confrontation because there's a couple reasons. Because
who are you talking to?
Yeah, who are you talking to? She starts advertising the cocoa powder to him, and he just goes like that. Who are you talking to? It's funny, but it's also like it's so authentic and it's so real because it's like, well, yeah, who the fuck is she talking to? She's talking up this cocoa to her fucking husband in a casual conversation, not even a casual conversation, in a serious conversation when she should be open and talking to him and comforting him, and she's talking about cocoa.
It's also like it's the first time he's thinking critically about it his whole life, because like that's not new to him, but he's finally like, wait a minute, there's finally no reason for that. She's not even making eye contact with me when she says it.
And it's one of those things, it's like maybe it was like on the back burner in his head for all these years, but it's like finally he's reached this point where he's like, he's got to just say so. Who are you talking to, man? Like, and then and they get into their fight, but what I love about when they get into the more physical confrontation, he is never really threatening or violent with her, which shows a lot about Truman as a character. I think it's a good touch that he grabs the she holds out the peeler, dicer, whatever, multi-use tool thing.
Yeah.
Points it at him, and he goes, "What are you gonna do? Dice me, peel me, cube me up?" And then takes it from her, but he never really like puts it out better knife or points it at her. He holds it away from her. If you watch his movements, he grabs her and holds her real tight, takes the sharp object from her, but he holds it away from her. He's never actively threatening towards her because he's just ultimately, he's not angry at her. He's just fucking confused, and the whole situation is falling apart in front of him.
Oh, it's especially when she like, oh my gosh, she's like screams, "Do something," and just confused the ever living shit out of Truman. He's like, "Who are you talking to?"
Yeah,
and it just escalates from there, and it just, oh man, like I'm not adding anything to this conversation. I'm just talking about how amazing that scene is.
I mean, it's always hard when we're trying to add to a conversation that is like about a movie from 30 years ago that is a classic, and like what are us four randos gonna add? But the thing I want to say is like the two things that it does him use, that it being like the slicer, dicer, whatever the fuck in that scene, is because like when you see that for the first time earlier in the movie, you kind of laugh at it because it's the exact product that like everybody's woken up at like a 2 a.m. daze on their couch with some weird infomercial on and been like, that'd be cool, but there's no way it works. So, like, you're already thinking that. So, like, even when he does it, like, you get that she's scared because the whole situation seems unpredictable. But at the same time, there's, like, no part of me that thinks that could be a lethal weapon anyway, even if he did have that capability in him, which I don't think the character does. But then also, it's just such a little cue of him, like, finally kind of turning the tables. Of they turned his entire life into a commodity, and now he's holding the blatant product placement in his hand and using it to get answers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to say about this scene, but I can't remember. I don't know. Whatever. We'll move forward. If I think of it, we'll come back.
No.
We'll come back to that.
No.
You know what, Sean? This is my podcast too.
My podcast.
And I'm the host.
My
this
podcast
week.
too.
So, hoping to bring Truman back to a controllable state, Kristoff properly reintroduces his father to the show under the guise of him having developed amnesia after the boating accident. The show regains its ratings and Truman seems to return to his routines. One night, Kristoff discovers that Truman has begun sleeping in his basement. Disturbed by this change in his behavior, Kristoff sends Truman's best friend Marlin to visit and discovers that Truman has secretly disappeared through a makeshift tunnel in the basement. Kristoff temporarily suspends the broadcast for the first time in its history, leading to record viewing numbers. So, yeah, that kind of shoots through a decent bit, but yeah, so there's an interview there. What the plot summary doesn't mention there's an interview on the news with Kristoff talking about the show and how they're going to reintroduce his father. And the whole time, the news anchor that's interviewing him is just stroking his ego and talking about how brilliant everything is. You know, he says, "Oh, well, how will you, explain him missing after the boating accident for 20-something years if he was alive the whole time?" And he goes, "Oh, amnesia." And he's like, "Oh, amazing. Who could have thought of that?" Which kind of shows the way, everyone has kind of been brainwashed and taken over by this show in some way. They're all feeding into his madness and his trap, if you will. And then that's when the actress that played Sylvia, the extra that Truman fell in love with, calls into the show, berating Kristoff, asking him, how could you do this to Truman? See what you did to him. No one deserves this. And he defends himself, saying that he gave him the closest thing he'll ever have to a normal life. The world outside is the sick and cruel one. And it's where you as much as you don't sympathize with Kristoff at all, of course, but you do get to the point where it's like, well, you do see, of course, what he's doing is wrong. Truman should be out, but he does have a point about the real world. He's right about that. The real world can be sick and cruel, and this maybe is closer to a normal life, but he shouldn't be the one to decide that, because this isn't his real life, and he's playing with someone's real life.
Well, that's the one thing that I always I don't like Kristoff, because of the whole thing where he's like, he argues that Truman can leave at any point as long as he wants to, and then as soon as Truman wants to, he puts all the barriers up, and it's like, no.
Well, yes, he says, oh, he can leave whenever he wants, but never presents him the option to, and then when he does have the option to, it says, no, please don't.
It's not like the guy turned. It's not like when he turned 13, he was like, "Hey, you live in a dome and it's super safe here, but if you want to leave, you can't." The whole thing is crafted around tricking him. Who are you fucking? I don't even. How could anyone buy that? But so many people do because they're entertained by it, so they don't give a shit.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where when I'm saying, he has a point about the real world, I'm not trying to say that he's a sympathetic person or someone who has a good motive. My point is just more so in how manipulative he is and how he's crafted this story that he's so quick that he has it ready, oh no, the real world is so cold and sick, and that's I'm protecting him, I'm giving him a normal life, yada yada yada. He's so quick to defend himself and not even think twice about the ramifications of what he's doing.
Keep gaslight girl boss.
Exactly.
I would have loved to see more of the situation, and this is obviously more like I want to see it explored like an outside way somehow, not in like the movie, like not a change the movie thing. What the fuck are you doing?
You may be about to say what I was gonna say.
I don't think I was about to say what you.
You're
I would want to see more of like the outside, like how they feel about Truman. Like the one girl they talk about her like protesting. And how like there are protests outside of here of all the people who want Truman out, and I want to see I just want to see that, like the political ramifications of that existing, and like the idea of how the outside world handles the idea of somebody being stuck in this dome essentially, and like one, legally why they're allowed to get away with it, but like two, what are the like there apparently have been protesters for like decades, especially since like it's not led by, but the girl who Truman was originally in love with is the one who's like out there fighting for him to be out
very publicly.
very publicly. So it's like I just am genuinely, I'd want to see more of like that too, just to get an idea of what that's like.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the outside world as well, because one thing I also really like about this movie is that it does show people viewing the Truman Show throughout. It has, there's some security guards that are working late shifts watching, eating pizza and whatnot, and some old ladies watching, and people in a bar and all that. And they're all watching, eager to watch every second of it. But then, as we'll get towards the end, we're not quite at it yet, but as we get there, and as he's escaping and all that, they're all suddenly cheering for him and wanting him to get out and against Kristoff. Though at the same time, moments before, days before, they were all watching and supporting the Truman Show and supporting him being in there. And it's like, and it kind of in some ways shows that it's like they're just fickle and they're just going off of the story and what they want to be entertained by and what's being pushed at the moment.
I think that in general too captures that, like you said, like in the moments leading up to the end when he's getting out, everybody, like there's not a single person there that seems to be like vocally rooting against him not finding out, other than like, I mean, in terms of people watching, obviously the executives are trying to keep him
going.
But at the same time, it's like for 30 years you've been followed, like you clearly want this to continue, like
the old ladies that I mentioned that are watching it, they're sitting there with a pillow with Truman's face on it. So it's like, okay, so you're giving them.
But she's not seeing a dime of. They're selling his face. He's not like, seeing any money.
Exactly, and it's like, so you're giving this studio your money and supporting the show, and you're such a big fan, but now you're saying, oh well, I love Truman, get him out, free him, and it's like, well, you're fake, you're fickle, you're switched up.
Because even though they, like, in a literal sense know he's a real person, it's just that, he's been so dehumanized through this process of, like, commodifying his quote-unquote life.
Yeah, all his personal moments were broadcast worldwide.
The people are rooting for him as a character to figure it out, even though as a person they have enabled. Like, if they actually ethically wanted him out, you would be doing the protesting, which is what, like, I'm gonna sound really like fucking MCU brained, and like I swear to God, despite what I said what I'm about to say, what I said earlier, and about the fact that I'm a white guy in a podcast is not how I always am. But like honestly, I was like, I kind of like, I almost wish there was like a companion novel that was just like from like Sylvia Lauren slash Lauren and like what the political climate is. Because like you see posters on her wall that there's clearly like a movement. It's not like she's just this one weirdo. And I'd really love to see like, and I think it was the right call. Not that there's not room for it in this movie because this is Truman's movie. But like I am fascinated by like what is that like? Like are there hearing, like how did, like Sean said, like obviously like this is a world where like the corporation was legally allowed to adopt the baby, but like all of this having been concede, like what do political protests mean? How do they speak out? Because even she, who is someone who is being an activist to try to get Truman free, is still watching the show because she has to kind of watch it to keep, and it plays on like how much like awful shit is in the news and you don't even fuck with how a network is covering your thing, but you kind of have to play along if you want to keep tabs on what the narrative is. And it's like this is it. It's like she loves this man. She wants nothing more than for him to be freed, to end this like giant grotesque experiment. But in order to do that, she has to watch the show. She has to bump the ratings, so she's not going to know what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm. And that's like, even that's a gross thought, I guess, because like the implications. It's about the implication. The implications behind like the idea of having to participate in it while still being an active protestant against. I'm trying to think of the right word, but like being an active protester that's like against this thing existing. It's a weird. I want to look at it more, but like it's an odd commentary on like the idea of like having to not forcibly be involved in this thing that you don't want to be involved in, but also are protesting about. It's just a weird, to me, it's such a genuinely nuanced way of like seeing that situation play out. And I just, like I said, it's something I'd really love to like just have an idea of like some sort of companion or something. Like I know the one thing I know that they talk about more in the commentaries is like stuff outside of this. Like I know another one that they talk about in the commentary, like for I think it's the DVDs for this. Like there's commentary on all of the characters, like backstories or like who they are outside of the show. Because like the one thing that they don't talk about too is and I was just looking this up for fun during this too, but there's like other commentary about like how Truman's best friend outside of the show is like an alcoholic and a drug user and has to constantly be in and out of rehab because he feels guilt for what he's doing to Truman. So like there's so many things that it's like I just want to know what the outside is like and how do they deal with the ramifications and the legal ramifications of it. It's just such an interesting thing to me.
Man, this is one of like, I'm very glad. I'm seriously so glad this was Jason's pick, just because it's the type of movie that feels like I texted Jason this like yesterday or whatever actually, but it's just the type of thing that like I watched it and I was like, how did I go almost 26 years of life and not have seen this? Because it just feels like the type of thing that like everybody should see. And not only like that, but like watch it. Like I want to watch this every so often so I don't forget how it made me feel, because it does make you like it makes you uncomfortable in the way that these things are supposed to, because it is so eerily like it's big and so great. Like you hear about the concept of, oh, they put this guy in a dome and tricked his whole life into being a TV show, and that sounds so crazy, and then you watch it and you're like, this doesn't feel that different, and I don't like that.
Yeah, well, and it could have been such a corny movie, like, you know what I mean? It could have been such a, like, corny, over-the-top, like, Adam Sandler-style comedy, but it wasn't. It was like a perfect drama comedy with a statement and with purpose, but that's also really funny.
Yeah, you could have made him a dunce where the comedy is like, how does he not know?
Exactly.
Or like a lesser movie could have played up like a thriller element more and made it be like, have like a twist partway through where like you don't know as the audience immediately. But I think that makes it worse. Like I think it's important that because in the end you become a viewer of the Truman Show. You are participating as the viewer in the Truman Show, and when you see those like interstitials of like the actors giving interviews, or of like from the perspective of a TV set, seeing the security guards or the people in the bar watching it, you're like, oh whoa, that's kind of me right now. And I guess again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but as the last thing the movie sticks you with is like the show ending, and it's nice to see Truman leaves, and that's nice to see, but the security guards are just like, all right, what else is on TV? And there's no actual that's it
They
didn't
don't
really,
actually.
I kind of laughed at first, but the more I've thought about it, it's like, oh no, we don't actually see any real change. Like on an individual level, which still matters, individuals matter. Truman gets out, and that is important. But they're like, you're hoping for this, like, says you don't see like a societal shift. Everyone's just kind of like, oh wow, what a great series finale. What's on next?
Right.
Yeah, it's just an innate need to consume and constantly consume, and just it feels uncomfortable because it's so real.
No, that's what I mean. Like, there's a lot of jokes and scenes and whatnot that are very funny and great on the surface, but also like when you are thinking about them after you're watching is when you're really like, oh damn, no, that's actually really sad.
which I think also adds to the comedy so much, because
for sure.
It's based off of real things that are like inherently relatable. Like I mean, every comedic element has to be relatable in some way, otherwise you're not gonna fucking laugh at it. But like the idea of like it just being about these things that you don't really think about but have an understanding of, it makes it funny. But then I love the layers to it. But yeah, there was something else I was gonna talk about that I can't remember now. But yeah, like Jake said, this is one of those movies where it's like I feel surprised that I haven't seen it up until this point, that it's like a movie I heard about that's so great. But to me, it's like this isn't a comparison because these two movies are not the same at all, but in my brain, how I inherently feel about them both is kind of similar. Like, I remember when I was a kid in school, and they would constantly, this is such a weird thing, and I don't know why. And I don't mean like as a young kid, they did this when we were older. I had multiple classes put on the movie Whiplash.
What? Love that movie.
Whiplash?
Fantastic.
Yeah, your
movie,
teacher.
but that's
I
a
went to the same
weird
schools as you.
school.
I don't know. I think it either had to, like, Whiplash, the reason I saw it originally was because of a class.
Right, because that movie is, that's not your boyfriend's dick. Like, that's quite the thing to show in a.
I think it might have been a band class of some kind during the end of like summer, or during the end of like the school year, not the end of summer.
I swear, I remember like I had a class where someone made a joke about us watching that, and the teacher was like, "That's a great movie, but nah."
But like,
dude, shout out to whoever that teacher.
Whiplash is one of those movies that I'd always tell somebody, like, you need to watch it. It's such a good movie. It's so fantastic. And this is like that same thing where it's like I'll occasionally probably continue to just like watch this every year or so, because it's something that I feel like watch it. It's worth it, and it's so good. It's just so good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning of this thing, I've watched this shit like probably close to at least 15 times, if not more.
Matt's like a glorified cameo this episode.
Well, it's because everybody makes the point already, and so I just have nothing to add. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna sit here. I'm just gonna enjoy.
Matt, be more aggressive.
Be aggressive.
Don't let these white men talk over you. Be more aggressive.
Let me ask Matt a specific
smack us around
question.
a little.
Let me talk to Matt a little bit. Let me talk to Matt a little bit then. Let me get him involved. All right.
I'm a little far from my mic right now because my cat is just taking up all my space.
That's okay. That's okay. How's your cat doing?
She's great.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
She's enjoying the attention. Here, let me see if I can.
Oh, what a sweetie. I'm talking about both you and the cat, buddy. Well, Matt, it's good to hear from you and your cat.
How much of that gets kept in is the question.
So Matt, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I told you there's nothing. I don't have anything to add. Everything I wanted to say is already been said, so I just had to sit here. Don't worry, I'll get my time to talk, especially with the next episode coming up.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
don't make
no.
sure you're.
Yeah.
You know
Don't
what your
leak
pick
it
is,
yet.
right? Because
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're gonna announce. Okay, I was just making sure
Now,
you're gonna be like
yeah, we got to announce it at the end of this thing.
Actually,
at the end.
that's what this specific episode was great for because it gave me a lot of time to think.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, it's probably gonna be any minute now because I'm sure we're like, I'm sure it will be less than this in podcast time, but in real time, it's been like a little over, just over an hour and a half. So.
Yeah. Fair
Really?
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys want to wrap up the plot then?
No.
You mean
All
you're,
right.
you're
Well,
the
we're
host
gonna
this time.
let's wrap up the plot then, since Sean said no. So, by the way, if I sound really sniffly and shitty right now, it's because plants are trying to kill me.
Me too.
So I'm fucking sorry, but I fucking I'm stuffed like a fucking whore at a gangbang. Anywho, Christoph orders a citywide search for Truman and is soon forced to break the production's day-night cycle to optimize the search. Truman is found sailing away from Sea Haven, having conquered his fear of water. Christoph resumes the transmission and creates a violent storm in an attempt to capsize Truman's boat. Truman nearly drowns, but his spirits remain unbroken and he continues to sail until his boat strikes the wall of the dome. Truman looks around and finds a staircase leading up to an exit door. As he contemplates leaving, Christoph speaks to him directly through a speaker system, encouraging him to stay by claiming that there is no more truth in the real world than this artificial one. After a moment of reflection, Truman looks up to the sky, back at Christoph, without even seeing his face, just to the sky, and utters his famous catchphrase, "And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night."
And good night.
Bows to the audience and exits. Viewers around the world celebrate Truman's escape, and Sylvia races to greet him. Christoph's supervisors end the program with a shot of the open exit door. After the broadcast ends, Truman's viewers look for something else to watch. We already mentioned some of the aspects of that ending, but what do y'all think? How do you think of that ending?
I just want to mention real quick, my favorite part of the search for Truman was the fucking moon turning into a searchlight. That was the most funniest fucking thing ever. I'm like, and then like this, how everyone is like patrolling in a line, yelling his name, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, if he already didn't think this was like, you know, some kind of like fake reality bullshit, this is definitely gonna do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing. It's
especially
like,
the moon.
oh, at that point they're like, the ship has fucking sailed, no pun intended. He knows this shit's centered around him. Let's just try to fucking find him first and foremost.
Like,
Let's
what
not
was the plan?
because every single person in the town is walking looking for him, which, like, obviously, yeah, you know, if someone goes missing in a town, they'll put up signs for you. They'll tell people to keep an eye out, but they're not gonna have like the night you go missing have a manhunt. You gotta be missing for like 24 hours for them to even fucking file a report most of the time.
Well, and then it's like, when he gets to the point of trying to talk him into staying, it's like, what's the plan? Even if he stays, like,
What's
is the
the
show
show
gonna function now that he
just
knows?
lives
Like,
his life and it's fake drama for everyone, and now it's just a regular sitcom, and he's an actor too.
I mean, I guess like Christoph is just desperate, and also again has this weird like everyone has this weird parasocial relationship to Truman, but Christoph's is like, I am God. Thinks of himself as both his God, but also his father. And I'm sure someone who knows more about the Bible I'm sure somebody who knows more about the Bible than me could pull some kind of like, you know, the father
daddy.
and the son shit there, but not I. I mean, I think it's a perfect ending though. Like it's funny and it gives you the satisfaction of Truman getting out, but not too much satisfaction in that, like, the more you think about it, the more you're like, wow, it's just like the community really failed him. There was all these people that could help him, and we only actually directly see one person try,
And everyone
so
else
there's,
only cares about helping
which
him when he's
and
about
it
to get out.
and it simultaneously makes you feel good about what you can achieve as an individual by doing the right thing, and also makes you be like, wow, there's a lot of things that need to change because it should not have taken 30 years, and we should not be watching them. Like the proportions of people who are just watching and cheering, and the person who is actively doing something is so off.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. But a few things I don't want to go on. I don't want to let go unnoticed is that I think it's beautiful that he escapes by ultimately facing his fear of the water and sailing, which is not only him, you know, conquering that fear, but also in larger representation, conquering all of the fake uh, life and history that is of his life that has been forced to him and rejecting it and moving through successfully. And that's beautiful visuals. The beautiful sky blue door with that staircase. I just love. That's just one of the prettiest shots ever. Is him stepping off of that boat onto that little side rail up the steps and opening the door. It's and the other, which leads me to the other thing that I wanted to say, is that I love that not only do we not see where Truman goes or what he does with his life, but also that we can't even see past the door. We just see a black room past the door. It's, I love that it's just fully uncertain. He's jumping into the darkness. He doesn't, I think that's a beautiful representation. He's jumping out of the sky into the darkness,
Yeah. I also love how, because of that it's super ambiguous, and honestly, is Truman even going to have a good life after escaping
He'll
what
definitely
essentially is
have
was like
psychological damage
exactly like he's going to be
and
scarred forever
paranoia.
for life. It just because the thing is that can he like truly trust anyone again? Because his whole world was essentially turned upside down. Everyone he loved and trusted turned out to be just an actor who probably didn't give two shits about him. And so, how can he live a normal life anymore? And it's just one of those like hidden tragedies where, yeah, Truman escaped, but he probably will never like truly escape, especially something as traumatic as having your whole world turned upside down, finding out your whole world is a lie.
Yeah. Well, and speaking
I
of
think
the psychological damage, there's actually a subsection on the Truman Show's Wikipedia page called the Truman Show Delusion, which is about a phenomenon that psychiatrists have observed, where schizophrenia patients will sometimes believe that they're on a television show, similar to the movie, which is why they refer to it as
Now that's
the show
cultural
Delusion.
impacts.
And that's actually what the writer of the film was asked about it, and he said that's how you know you've made it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Matt on all fronts, but I want to be slightly more positive and sound like a white woman's Instagram post and be like, yeah, but the joy is in the wonder, which sounds so fucking stupid, but like it's that's it is like Matt's like probably right in that you're gonna have all this damage like psychologically from all that happened. You're gonna have so many trust
You're gonna be
issues.
paranoid for the rest
He's
of
also
your
going to be
fucking
entering
life.
the quote unquote like real world as like probably the most famous person alive. But also it's just like, but like Jason said, it's like the happiness is coming from the not knowing, and for the first time in 30 years, he's actually going to have somewhat of a say. And like all of those things can be true, but just like the thank God catharsis that he's walking through that door, and you don't know what it means, but it's so much happier not knowing. And like all of those things can be true, but just like the thank God catharsis that he's walking through that door, and you don't know what it means, but it's so much happier not knowing. But it's so much happier not knowing because that's it. Is like everything was scripted, and now he doesn't know, and that it's just wonderful that he doesn't know.
It is
That he
also
gets to wonder.
like kind of going back to our point before, how people don't really see this man escaping this literal prison as like anything more than a season finale to a show. They don't
Yeah.
see the whole the reality of it, of a man literally trying to find the truth
And fighting
trying
for
to
his
escape
life.
the lie and literally fighting for his life. They probably aren't even aware that his life is in actual danger. Like I remember when Christoph was told that he can't kill Truman on screen, and he just says do it anyway. And
He says
the
he was
reactions of
born
the
on
people
screen.
exactly. But the thing is, like, the people's reaction was like a reaction you see when your favorite character dies in a show. It's not really, a reaction you'll give to, seeing an actual person die on screen.
But yeah, like Jake said, he's been dehumanized this whole time because he's
Exactly.
just a character on a TV show.
The reason I started watching the show was like the fascinating concept of his is he's the only one who's not an actor. So they all know, but yeah, they just don't. It just doesn't. Long ago, it stopped being someone they care about more than the way you care about a fictional character on your favorite scripted show.
Yeah. So it was really, really sad to see. Like all these people, like the guy in the tub, the women holding the Truman pillow, like they're all entertaining characters, even though they aren't really characters. But it's just so sad because they're just what they're doing was what caused this in the first place, and the fact that they aren't even aware that they're part of the problem is just really, really sad. And the ending, where the guy just says, "Okay, let's see what else is on. What else is on?" No one really learns their lesson. The world just moves on, and I don't want to be like the downer guy, but like that's just how I see the ending, and it's just, in my opinion, the Truman Show is like a very, very like well done tragedy, well disguised tragedy.
I mean, I'd also add in the positive sense that it's like Truman finally gets a choice, which he didn't have in the beginning. He never had a choice. He was forced into that world and then never had anything else. So like to genuinely get a choice between the unknown and what you know, and choosing to go into the unknown, I think is like a genuinely awesome, like that's a genuinely more hopeful interpretation of it. And I get the idea of like we know what the real world is and we know that it's hot garbage, but who knows what it's like for him out there is really the idea that I take away from it. It's you don't know. And there's something frightening about that in the end, but there's also something that's really, really genuinely like fantastic about that because it can be anything. I mean, that's like a big part of the human experience is like not knowing what's going to come next, and the idea of like that's terrifying but also so thrilling to us just in general that it's I see it as only a positive. There's not really anything. Obviously, bad things can happen, but we got to experience bad things to experience good things. So, like the idea of Truman getting the choice now to have those experiences and have a say in what his life will be like is just it's overall a positive one.
Yep.
He can fall in love for real. He can do like it's
He
just
can find Sylvia. He can go to
Pepe
Fiji
Sylvia.
with her
Pepe
Sylvia.
Sylvia.
and find out that her real name's Lauren.
Pepe Lauren.
God, that's gonna fuck with him.
I don't
The
think he
love of
cares.
my life isn't named Sylvia. That's why they couldn't find you in Fiji.
He's also not in Fiji, but
I know.
that also could be.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
No, because he calls and he asks for Sylvia. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was referencing.
I know. I'm just saying.
Piece of fucking shit.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have any other thoughts on the ending? I think it was perfect. I think it was the perfect stuck landing
I think
for
Truman
this-
should have drowned.
for the film.
A lot of mixed
Visually,
emotions.
emotionally, it was suspenseful. It was action-packed. It was beautiful, and I love that it ends with his little "in case I don't see ya," and he delivers the line wonderfully as Jim Carrey does.
Good morning, good
I know.
afternoon,
Also, it's
good
a
evening, and
one-
good night.
I love how it's just like one more big fuck you to
Yeah, then
Christoph.
he's
Just
like,
give him like
"Alright."
the most unsatisfying satisfying ending.
After like everything that he says to him, he pours his heart out trying to manipulate him and to get him to stay and all that, and he just looks at him and doesn't even give him the time of day. He's just like, you know what?
And then with the
I'll see
script.
ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Yeah, I think
And
that
he
Christoph was
bows.
so
The
desperate.
bow is so
to-
perfect.
Yeah, it seems like Christoph was so desperate to just get some arousing final speech to Truman, right? He's talking about say something. You're on national television, and he just says what he says every fucking morning.
Yeah, and it's
Just like a big fuck you to Christoph.
which is great too, because it's like he's pleading with him like that, saying, oh, you're on national television, say something, as if that fucking means anything to him, because he doesn't know what the fucking real world is, and he's been on national television his entire fucking life, and he didn't know.
The guy can give less of a shit.
And I love the ending too. One last thing that I'll say about it is that, as manipulative and evil and antagonistic as Christoph is, he's always pretty calm throughout the movie. He's stern, but he's direct and calm, and he's never really gets his emotions too over the top until Truman's missing and until has to confront the possibility of missing Truman. And it kind of shows that that's really he has a sad existence because it's fully hinged on trying to keep this man in this sick little game that he has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like his entire persona is based on control, and as soon as he loses that
Right,
control, he starts to unwind.
He unwinds because he realizes that he has nothing without Truman in that cage.
Oh yeah, sounds like a man with a god complex.
Well, that's true.
All right. Well, that's all I got.
You guys have anything else? Should we wrap this up? Go to favorites, least favorites?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I
alright.
said enough to
Yeah.
be cataloged as a cameo. I think I said enough.
Well, I think my favorite part of the movie is it's real specific and it's real subtle and small, but the scene where he's staring at the mirror into the camera and the crew guys are questioning if he's looking at them and if he knows and if they should get Christoph, and then he starts talking to himself and drawing a space helmet around his head and drawing all this stuff with soap on the mirror, and then it starts to look like, oh, he doesn't know and he's just goofing off with himself. And then right before he walks off, he goes, "That one's for free," telling you that he does know, and this is his last little nod because that's right before he heads off too. That's one of the last things he does, and that's one of my favorite parts of the movie. So I had to give that a shout out as my favorite. I don't really have a least favorite with this movie, and that fucking might sound corny to say, but this is one of my favorite movies. It means the world to me. It's so good. I love it. So I'm not gonna say a least favorite because I fucking love it, and it's so good. So fuck you. Sorry, it's my episode. Fuck you. It's my day.
No.
And I will recommend it. Of course, I tell everyone that they should watch this movie.
What?
I talk about it before. What?
What if one of us chose a movie and didn't recommend that movie?
Yeah, imagine. I picked this movie
I got something
and I
up my
forced
sleeve.
you all to watch it, but I don't
Oh, I
fucking
have
like it. You shouldn't watch it.
I got a thing or two up my sleeve. That's all I'll say.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Why you say you got something?
I got all I'm saying is
He has
all I'm
other
saying is I have
plans up
something up.
his sleeve.
I have things in my sleeve.
He is a fat
Oh.
cock.
Arms.
Of
I got
course
arms.
I've recommended it to people in my personal life, so of course
Yes.
I'm gonna recommend it here on
Well,
the podcast that I forced us all to talk about it for over an hour for.
I have no reason to disagree. In fact, I also recommend to go see it. And there really isn't a least favorite part for me. Same thing as Jason. Because like the movie is so simple, it's able to have very strong moments, and you can't really, argue against simplicity if that's the point of the movie. And then it makes up for it like the lack of depth in the story and philosophical discussions about the movie itself. And so it's not like it's not deep either. In fact, we had like a 2-hour conversation about this movie. I would say that this movie has a lot of depth to it. So, Biscuit, what are you doing? Sorry, my cat's scratching the bed. But anyway, I recommend this movie. It's incredible, and you should watch it.
All right. I can't think of a least favorite, honestly. There isn't really anything that I dislike about it. My favorite thing, Jim Carrey. That's it. Dr. Eggman. That's it. I wish he wasn't a weird.
Robotnik, excuse me.
Greatest actor of my lifetime.
I wish he wasn't a weird person outside of movies, but he's hopefully, I think, going in a better direction, it seems. Personally.
At least he's
anyways.
not like a total asshole.
No, he's
Or
just
He's
pedophile.
just bizarre.
he's just
and
hinted at
He's
being
well.
Isn't he anti-vax?
he hinted at
Yep.
being weirdly anti-vax, but then kind of backpedaled. And there were some other
I don't know,
things.
he's very pro Canada's socialized healthcare, which I am as well.
So he's an odd,
That's all I'll
bizarre
say
person,
about that.
but I give him a plus for acting, A1. And do I recommend this? Yeah. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend it too. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. This was one of the quickest 5 stars on Letterboxd I've maybe ever given. I don't really necessarily have like a negative element. I know I talked a little bit about wanting to see more certain things, but that just means like kind of in the greater sense. Like I wanted to see more of like the political climate, but I wouldn't actually want that to be put in this movie. It's something that I would almost be like, I'd be fascinated to read about it, and that's why I said like a book. But yeah, I think the movie would be worse if you tried to jam anything else in there. My favorite thing's the ending, just because there's so many good movies that are great for like 99% of it, and then they fuck up the ending. And there's more to life than like like the whole story is the journey that all matters. But yeah, like when you see a movie and it's really good and then you think kind of messes up the ending, yeah, it leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. So when something is this good throughout and then I feel like it hits all the notes of its ending are tonally consistent, are thematically consistent, and are as enjoyable to watch in terms of like the set pieces and the comedy of it all as everything else, that's just really impressive. So that to me is the highlight. And yeah, I mean, of course, like I said, I'm very glad that I get to be a person who goes, you haven't seen the Truman Show? You gotta watch it. Instead of what I was 3 days ago, which was nah, I haven't seen the Truman Show. I'll watch it eventually.
I'm glad y'all liked the film I picked, and you're welcome for exposing you. So anyway, I guess I should stop dragging my feet on this ending. I'm just having so
'cause
much fun
half
with
of
you
this-
guys. Thank you to Alo Fett for art, and Alo now has a YouTube channel as well. Just to spell his Twitter just to make sure you all get it, ALOFETT. And his YouTube channel is Alowren, ALOWREN. So go check that as well. Check that out as well. Jason plugs, I'm working on things, the Upsides PA on Instagram, the _Upsides PA on Twitter, the Upsides on SoundCloud. We're looking at mid to late April for something to be out. Hopefully I hit that, but I should. I wrote everything that I need to write. I just need to actually finish it all. Half of it is finished, all right? Over half of it is finished. But there's a lot of work on the other half, but it'll be done.
I'm waiting for you to say I have a quarter of it done.
I haven't done anything.
I have an idea in my head.
So anyway, please follow Culturally Illiterate on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to Culturally Illiterate Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us at illiterate_pod on both Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. For more of us, reach us at culturallyilliteratepod@gmail.com for questions, comments, or hate mail. Next episode, it is Matt's turn to host. So, Matty, lay it on us. What are you gonna tell us? Send us off with what our pick is.
So the movie that we are going to talk about next is a DreamWorks film.
Okay.
And it
It's a
Shrek.
Kung Fu Panda 1.
Let's go.
That's not Shrek. Boo.
It's been a long
It's not
time.
Shrek.
It's been a long
I
time.
haven't watched
one of the
that.
reasons why-
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I'm
Okay.
picking this is to help me cope with Kung Fu Panda 4 because that was
You're disappointed?
That one was
so painfully mediocre. It hurt. It hurt to watch. And I had to listen to Aquafina for an hour and a half.
Oh, God.
Oh,
I don't want to listen
Oh,
to her
man.
for a minute and a half.
I.
Well, in case... Oh, fuck, sorry. Well...
In case, oh fuck.
Well,
Off the rails.
to all of you, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.